New York Post that is that every time I get like any sort of positive coverage will immediately write articles about how I'm a terrorist that needs to be killed or whatever. They got on and they hit one of the funniest bars on this, and I can't even deny it. Okay. Liberal loudmouth streamer Hassan Piker claims he was detained by U.S. immigration officials. I respect it. I respect it. I respect that. Game recognized game. They hit me. They hit me hard. Okay. They hit me hard where it hurts, calling me liberal, which I think is not great. German conservative media posted something that's surprisingly not ass. That is surprising. Is this good? I don't know. That's a horrible photo of me. U.S. journalist detained. They hit me with a loudmouth. I am a loudmouth, and I respect being called that, but I do not respect being called a liberal. I don't appreciate that. I think that's crazy. Hold on. Please call up Getty Images or something. You need more photos. That's not how that works. Anyway, and for him, but there's a whole cadre of good government and activist law folks who would be extremely relieved to hear you roundly disclaim the wisdom of talking to CBP today. What? Yeah, I already mentioned that in my coverage, for the record. I said it. I was like, the only reason why I did this was because I wanted to investigate it further, and I wanted to see where this would go. There was a red line for me, which was like if they wanted to engage in some sort of unlawful search and seizure of my property, but overall, like I wanted to see what they were like. It was a fact-finding mission for me, using my privilege that I have. You know what I mean? So, Alex had an aneurysm this morning. Oh yeah, I was making a joke about Qatar funding, which I thought was really funny. Did they go through your luggage? No. Anyway, we'll get to all of that in a second. Should everyone privileged do the same? I mean, it's up to you. One of my favorite compliments I ever got was "Everybody hates you, you smug bastard." So here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. As you guys already know, I'm not going to lie, Hassan, you're being guilty of the same thing you accused that Newark mayor of. Don't downplay the situation. They literally asked you if you support Trump. You should be sounding the alarms, making the rounds on legacy media to talk about how insane that is. I am doing that. What? I'm doing that. What the hell? What the f? Some chatters are just some different kinds of idiots. Yeah, I don't know. There's already like, what do you want me to go? Wee woo? Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I criticized the New York mayor for saying the Customs and Border Patrol was nice. I didn't say that the situation that I had with the Customs and Border Patrol was nice at all. As a matter of fact, I thought it was a ridiculous and unlawful detention that was specifically designed to create a chilling effect on speech. That is very clear. Hello? People are circulating this as evidence to say you aren't minimizing it. Yeah, I didn't want people to freak out. Like, what are we doing? Anyway. So, where was I? All right, this is so funny. Like half of the internet and most of the reactionary commentary sphere that ranges from people that consider themselves to be liberals all the way down to like neo-Nazis is both celebrating and also downplaying what this Trump administration is doing. And it's really funny that I still have dumbass supposedly leftists in my own community that's like, who are like, you didn't go hard enough, dude. You should have thrown fisticuffs or some shit. Which I find really funny. Okay, man. You shouldn't travel because they will grass you up, man. What does that mean? But in any case, as I already talked about this, like I already gave my experience. I already explained my experience in great detail. And yeah. Okay, hog pedals are thirsting over Trump's granddaughter after she turned 18. They're gross. They're disgusting. And it's the least surprising thing I've seen. So I see your side too. You're being canary, but a lot of effort goes into advising leftists how to avoid exposure. And since you're a role model for a lot of folks, it can be read as undermining those efforts. I think don't take it personally. Just validate the impulse. Your reasons are singular. Everyone else should follow the guidance. And activist law community. I'm gonna lose my mind, dude. You're wanting me to address things that I already said. I already said all of those things. Okay, watch the video instead of coming in here and chirping at me. Oh my God, what the is happening? I already addressed all of this. I said I have a position of profound privilege, and I use that in this moment to actually talk instead of immediately doing what is normally wise in those circumstances, which is to not talk and to demand a lawyer or ask if you are being detained. I don't understand why my own community, who was probably in here listening to me explain the situation, is now behaving in this way. What the is going on? I mean, actually, what the is going on? What is happening? What is happening? Yes, the other mics were on. I just turned them off. Thank you, chatter. Oh my God. You're canceled by Law Twitter, buddy. Okay. So, what is this? Look who finally spoke out against Israel. Comrade SquarePants. Okay, guys, stop. Stop posting random shit. So, I dislike you, and I heard that. What do you mean? How you get detained and people are trying to cancel you for it? Because this is part of the reason why I say nobody grifts to the left, okay? This is why I say nobody grifts to the left, because the left broadly are incredibly annoying people. They are incredibly annoying people that constantly want to talk about how radical they are or constantly showcase how they would do things differently in that situation. There's never any charity to other leftist figures in general. And there is so much ideological diversity that that people they operate on this like almost puritanical basis with their representation of their own ideology, and that's it. It's really annoying. Leftists are unbearable and incredibly annoying, and personally despise solidarity, and it's something that I actively try to work against. But it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, this is a good summarization of the events that took place. This is from a progressive Now This Impact TikTok account. I'll replay this real quick from yesterday. Agent goes, "Step aside, sir." I was like, here we go. All right. I'm waiting in the corner. This Latina ICE agent comes up, picks me up, takes me to this detention center. I sit down, fluorescent light bulbs, the whole nine. Okay. They have benches in the back of O'Hare Airport where there's like a detention area. Okay. There's a detention area. I'm sitting there. There's like a bunch of terrified families. Finally, this agent comes out, says, "Hassan Piker." I'm like, "That's me. Coming with me." I'm like, "Oh, brother, here we go." They take me to this back room. Okay. And the back room is not great. Everything, the back room is designed in the most hostile way I've ever been inside of a room. The vibes are really back there. Everything is fluorescent light bulb. It's very obvious that they knew exactly who the I was. It's not leftist, it's the internet. Every internet subculture operates like that. Conflict draws in viewers and drives revenue. That's why the internet is filled with contentious assholes. I think so. He kept saying, "Oh, well, since you mentioned that, what do you do as a job?" And I was like, "I'm a Twitch streamer." And he's like, "Well, since you mentioned that you were a Twitch streamer, what kind of things do you stream about?" And at first I was like, do I just tell him I play video games? Because I don't think this is going to believe me if I say I just play video games to him, right? So I was just like, yeah, I play video games, but I also do current events sometimes, drama, internet. And he's like, "Oh, do you talk about, since you mentioned that, you talk about the things that you talk about, do you talk about the news?" And I was like, "Yeah, I talk about the news." And he kept saying, "Okay, so when you talk about the news, do you talk about the war?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "Do you talk about Trump?" And that was the first time where I was like, what the is this question? Like, I literally straight up told him, I was like, "Why are you asking me this?" Like, I was like, what does this have to do with anything? I saw no reason to hold back on certain things. So I said, "I don't like Trump." And I was like, "What are you going to do? It's protected by the First Amendment. I don't like Trump." Yes. Right? Like, I was like, "I'm not fond of him. I don't like him. He said he was going to end the wars. He hasn't ended the wars. What's up with that?" As a black chatter, you talking to cops was killing me, bro. Dude. Oh my God. Okay. Chatters. As I mentioned yesterday, and I guess I will have to repeat it over and over again, you shouldn't do this. The reason why I did this is because I have a ton of privilege. Okay. I wanted to investigate what this inquiry was going to look like. I am wealthy enough to be sheltered from additional scrutiny. I am a public figure. If this were to happen to you in a situation like this, as it's happened to many Americans so far that have come into the country, there wouldn't be 7,000 international articles written about it. The reason why I took advantage of the privilege that I have, being a public person, and also on top of that, having enough money to potentially overcome any sort of serious scrutiny from the government, and access to groups like the ACLU and numerous other First Amendment defending like civil rights organizations with lawyers, used this as an opportunity to try to figure out exactly what was going on with this inquiry process. Okay. And I stressed this over and over again yesterday, which is to not let you do this. I told you, you shouldn't do this. This is it. I have immense privilege, which is why I had the opportunity in my mind. I made this calculation to actually entertain this back and forth to see what was going on in their line of inquiry, instead of immediately trying to lawyer up in this otherwise the secondary hold or detention that they engaged in. Do you see Lolo's TikTok about you? In any case, from the way you described him, this Iraqi agent seemed begrudgingly to be interviewing you on the Twitch drama stuff. He wasn't really invested. I'm sure those white men CBP agents might have even known who you were. If you got them, it would have been 1,000%. Yeah, I mean, I can only speculate. Okay, and I don't know why people can't comprehend this, especially because I mentioned it. I stressed the importance of this over and over again, and I think people are still looking for any opportunity. People are still looking for any opportunity to be like, I would have done things differently, or you're being a bad example, or whatever. Okay, there was never a moment where I said,
so unless you live under a rock, you are probably aware.
Americans are so cute because they'll have
what is this?
So unless you live under a rock, you are probably aware of the reality that right now in the United States, things are getting more repressive. The state is becoming bolder. People are being taken off the street. Not just undocumented people anymore, which was already bad enough, but people with green cards, etc., and so forth. And what's been happening more recently is even people who were born in the United States with a passport are coming into the U.S. from vacation or travel, and they are being stopped, sometimes randomly, sometimes not randomly, and being questioned about their political affiliations, political leanings, things of that nature. So yesterday, I got a text message from my friend, Hasan Piker, who, if you know who he is a very prominent left-wing voice. He's one of the largest streamers on Twitch and certainly the largest left-wing streamer. And he was stopped coming in from France. He was coming into Chicago, and they stopped him for a period of time and questioned him, and ultimately he was fine. But he texted me as he was basically being pulled aside to let me know that was happening, because I am his lawyer friend. And we did have a conversation after this about maybe in the future some things that will be done differently. But this should worry all of us a lot, because Hasan Piker is a very prominent left-wing voice. He is well known. He has a large following on the internet. And he is a rich person. So he's a person with reach and influence. And even though he was only briefly stopped for a period of time when he was coming back in the United States, the fact was they flagged him. They were specifically...
No, Lolo didn't scold me. He did not. I explained to him exactly why I did what I did as well in that conversation. Like, I literally told him, just as I told you, what the purpose of it was.
Looking for him and asking him specific questions about his activities as a political actor in the United States. They're asking him about political opinions. You have
no idea how what you said could be used against you later. It's not about your example, but they're making you into an example. They're clearly looking for a reason to somehow charge you with material support for terrorism. I know, but you do realize that the things that I said in that room are, one, still protected speech, and two, there's nothing I can do if the federal government wants to make an example out of me, you dumb what is wrong with you? I know. That's kind of the main point of contention here, don't you think? What the are you saying? Yes, I know that already. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't talked to literal journalists and also organizations so far since this conversation took place? I like that. I like that chatters in here are like, dude, you shouldn't have done that. It's like, even if I did, and they use that, use what I said in that interview against me, that's still a precedent-setting court case. You understand? I'm taking that risk knowing full well what the risks associated with it are. And I'm also telling you not to do that. But I also will not be intimidated. Like that was my point. I like that because of the parasocial nature of Twitch streaming, you could have a fascist government unironically apprehend and detain political dissidents, and chatters in the chat will still be like, well, you know, you should have conducted yourself better. Like, shut up. I know what I'm doing. What are you saying right now? I knew that I was taking a calculated risk to talk in that situation. I know that. God damn. This was partially the reason why. I made this calculated decision, because I wanted to see what their inquiries were going to look like. I had heard from TikTok stories of American citizens getting apprehended at the border, getting detained at the border. Okay. And I had a different red line than some other people do. My red line was unlawful search and seizure. But up until that point, I was going to entertain the inquiry so that I could engage in some sort of fact-finding mission. And I actually got TikTok as your source of news. No, you moron. I'm the source of news in this situation. That's what I'm saying. I had heard firsthand accounts from people, not just on TikTok, but immigration attorneys being apprehended at the border, for example, on NBC and numerous other news outlets that had verified reports. So when this situation came, when I was in the similar situation, I was the one who was like, okay, I'm going to see what this is about. Anyway, let's continue.
He said in the past, his Twitch ban, some things that were frankly ridiculous, and other things that maybe weren't ridiculous but are scary for an administration to be looking for in terms of what your political beliefs are. Your political beliefs shouldn't matter in terms of you being a United States citizen and you making transit in and out of the United States. Coming from France, mind you, like not coming from somewhere where there's things are unstable on the ground or there are actors that the United States considers to be dangerous, just like coming from a trip to France.
How can you trust things that happen to you? Are an anecdotal experience unreliable? Yes.
So, yeah, I've said this before. You need to be aware. Like, this is the reality right now. The Trump administration is floating the idea and talking, like Stephen Miller is talking about, they want to suspend habeas corpus. Habeas is the ability to challenge a wrongful arrest, you know, so basically the police can't arbitrarily arrest you and not tell you why you're being held or hold you indefinitely. It's a critical function of due process, which is what every American is guaranteed, but also everybody who is on American soil by the Constitution.
Now, the issue here is that the only place where you technically don't have this, or it's technically an illegal gray area, and I think like immigrant rights attorneys will also tell you this, or at least as far as everything that I read, they also will literally tell you that it's like kind of a gray area, is the border. Okay? That's it. That's the one area where there is definitely a deliberate effort from the Supreme Court and the American reactionary movements that have eroded constitutional protections piece by piece. You're more useful to the movement free and doing this work than in a cell somewhere, bro. We don't have to give them a sacrificial lamb to know it's fascism. I also disagree with you on this. Then why don't I just leave the United States of America and escape and like keep streaming from a different country. This is something that a lot of people are suggesting in a very parasocial way as well. And it's like, no, there are going to be moments where I am presented with a threatening situation, and I think that it is appropriate for me to at least have some skin in the game. It's all right, especially because I do have a lot of privilege. That's it. And yes, I will continue to travel internationally, and I will continue to talk about these things, and I'll continue to report on things that happen to me as well. As I've said over and over again, I am not a journalist. I'm a political commentator. I'm not an activist. I'm a political commentator. I'm an entertainer. But there are unique moments in my career where I do engage in some journalism, where I make some news, right? And my personal experience in that regard played a role here.
That's established law, and that has been established law. We know that this administration doesn't care about any of that stuff and doesn't care about what the law is. And all of us collectively need to be smart about how we are articulating certain things online, not to be silent, to be perfectly clear before the do not comply in advance heroes in the comments go absolutely insane. And really, wow, you are such heroes down there. I'm saying let's maybe try not to get black bagged and thrown in federal prison, because actually you're not helpful to anybody if you're there. Okay. Important to remember that posting is not activism, right? So you have to be smart about what you're doing, how you're doing it. And you have to protect yourself and your communities. You also need to put pressure on your elected officials to actually stand up about these things. Are most electeds not really doing much about it? Things are really bad, but I also think Trump's approval rating is incredibly low. And there are a lot of judges that are pushing back in terms of any of the enforcement things that this administration is trying to do. And we collectively need to pay attention and show up when the law is broken, when people are detained, etc. We need to keep each other and our communities safe, because we're the only ones who are going to do it. And you need to be smart and not put stupid things in writing, honestly. Doesn't mean you can't express your political opinion. You should be expressing your political opinion. I just wrote a piece. I've written pieces about Luigi Mangione. I've written pieces about not feeling bad for police officers that got killed. You can still express yourself. You just need to be smart about the way you do that.
So, there's a lot of commentary, a lot of back and forth happening on this stuff, and there's been a lot of news coverage on it as well. And virtually every single outlet has reached out at this point to get to get my insight into what took place. I have, with the limited amount I have, limited amount of spare time that I have, I tried to use that to the best of my ability and respond to questions and things like that. But overall, there was, of course, a lot of support from liberals who were terrified of the things that are unfolding. A lot of articles were written about it virtually every single major news article, major news publication wrote about it. Here's the New York Times. On Hassan Piker, popular left-wing streamer, says he was detained at airport. Mr. Piker said he was questioned for 2 hours on topics including the war in Gaza and President Trump. Popular Turkish-American online streamer said he was stopped and questioned for hours about his political beliefs by U.S. Customs and Border Protection after flying back in the United States from overseas on Sunday. Mr. Piker, 33, said in a live broadcast on Monday that he was asked about his job, his beliefs on Gaza and the President Trump, and other topics he discussed on his live stream while being held for 2 hours at an airport in Chicago. Mr. Piker, who was born in the United States, said he was passing through global entry and a U.S. Customs and Border Protection program that eases security checks for travelers deemed to be low risk when an agent asked him to step aside. According to Piker, a U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement agent led him to an area he described as a detention center where he was taken into a room for questioning. It's very obvious they knew who I was, Mr. Piker said, using an expletive. He has about 4.5 million followers combined on YouTube, Twitch, Tricia McLaughlin, a spokesman for the Department of Homeland Security, said in a statement on social media that Mr. Piker's claims that his political beliefs triggered the inspection are baseless. Upon entering the country, this individual was referred for further inspection, a routine lawful process that occurs daily and can apply for any traveler, she said. Once his inspection was complete, he was promptly released. Now, I found this to be a very funny response, and the reason why I think it's really funny is because, and I tweeted about this already last night. I found this to be really interesting. One, because first and foremost, they admit to it happening, which which is, you know, like they openly admit to it taking place, right? Saying that I'm lying for likes is very funny because they don't even deny that it took place. Okay? They simply deny that it was a political targeting. And I think it's important. I think it's important to take note of what the Department of Homeland Security is taking issue with here. Okay? What the Department of Homeland Security is taking issue here is what the Department of Homeland Security is taking issue with here is political beliefs being triggered for the inspection. Now, I think that's important to take note of because it shows you what the admin is worried about. Okay? Because if they were not worried about anything, they would have just been like, yeah, he's he is a figure of notoriety that we pulled a red flag on. Because they openly admit that the detention happened. They openly admit that the investigation took place, right? But they're worried about the backlash that they might receive given that this is perceived as a political targeting, okay? To which I responded with, by the way, in the NBC article, what part of a lawful routine inspection requires the DHS to question me about my political views, my opinions on Donald Trump, or my stance on Israel and Palestine? The agent was cordial, but the experience, along with reports of other Americans facing similar questioning, seems intended to create a chilling effect on speech. As a taxpayer, I believe CBP agents should be focusing on actual threats, like preventing agricultural risks or combating trafficking, not interrogating people about their political beliefs. So, as I said, the DHS response is so funny because they're not even disputing that it happened. They're omitting the insane questions that were asked and instead claiming that I wasn't targeted for my political beliefs. Why'd y'all ask me about Trump, Israel, Houthis, Hamas, and my Twitch bans then? So that is what is interesting about the process. Either the DHS is lying about the political motivations for Hasanabi's detention, or asking citizens about their allegiance to Israel is now their standard practice. Exactly. Like, is this normal? Not even just like allegiance to Israel, but also opinions on Donald Trump, the president, or opinions on Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. Like, that's crazy. That's not normal. That is the whole point of this. The reason why this is insane is because you are asking an American citizen who is literally a part of global entry, right? That has already been, that is a known traveler to the Department of Homeland Security, an American citizen that was born on U.S. soil, questions about whether or not they have an allegiance to Donald Trump, the current president. None of this will bar you entry into the country. Do you understand? And I don't even think that was the purpose. I think that the purpose was to create a chilling effect. That's it. Mr. Piker described the conversation as really, really interesting and very cordial. He said the agent asked him what he did for work, the topics he talked about in his streams, and whether he discussed the news, including the war in Gaza and President Trump. They straight up tried to get something out of me that I think they could use basically to detain me permanently, Mr. Piker said, using an expletive again. There's no direct connection or direct involvement. He also described the agent who identified himself as Iraqi as very sympathetic, where, okay, they literally took very specific parts of this to make this seem like it was a pleasant experience overall, okay? And they just they omitted parts of this conversation that I definitely maintained was not a pleasant experience. When he asked the agent why he was being detained, Mr. Piker said the agent told him it was routine. He also said he was repeatedly asked about his opinions on whether he was involved with Hamas, the Houthis, an Iranian-backed militant group that controls northern Yemen, and Hezbollah. Throughout the questioning, Mr. Piker said he was transparent in his responses and repeated the same answers, including describing himself as a pacifist who wanted the wars to end. In his broadcast, Mr. Piker said he planned to submit an online inquiry about why he was stopped. That's why I told you don't say cordial. That makes it sound like Ras Baraka. Yeah, but it's the truth. There's one citizen who has direct contact with Hamas, and through that, he facilitated the release of Eden Alexander. He's a pro-Trump Palestinian American businessman who arranged the White House-Hamas direct negotiations. Yes, exactly. The Trump administration is in direct contact with Hamas. What are we talking about? The idea that having a direct contact with Hamas or having direct contact with the Houthis or having direct contact with Hezbollah is not allowed in any way, shape, or form is, once again, an erosion of what previous considerations would immediately destroy as far as like a need for detention. Okay. We've already dropped that ball completely. It is ridiculous. do you mean? Have you interviewed Hamas? I haven't, but I would like to in the future. What are you going to do? Arrest me? What are you, crazy? That's insane. Like, that is actually insane, especially because as I mentioned this, like, Jeremy Scahill's interviews with the Ansar Allah movement played a formative role in the Trump administration coming to the table in Oman to cut a ceasefire arrangement with the Houthis. Okay, direct contact with membership, with direct contact with like the Politburo of Hamas is an essential part of the Eden Alexander release that took place. Yeah, and at no point did I say I was treated well. Okay, I said the agent was cordial, but the experience overall was designed to create a chilling effect on speech. You were giving them time to make shit up through whatever reason they detained you with. I have mentioned this before, and I think that a lot of people don't understand this, but you absolutely are allowed right now under the First Amendment protections as a citizen or non-citizen to express support for Hamas. The idea that you cannot do that is ridiculous. You, in the United States of America, as long as you are on U.S. soil, are protected by the First Amendment. The idea that you cannot do that is new. That's new shit, okay? That is new shit. And even then, I personally was managing the risk in my mind and did not take it to that step when I was having a conversation with the ICE guy, okay, with the agent. I don't even know if he's ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, or potentially HSI. Like, a lot of people online just simply don't understand what the First Amendment looks like and what it's supposed to be used for. It's this. This is what it's supposed to be used for. It's a restriction on the government, okay? It's not a restriction on you. The First Amendment is not about private corporations refusing to ban you because you said slurs. It's this. This is literally what it's there for. This is the exact reason for why it exists, okay? It is not a restriction on the citizens. It is a restriction on the government from engaging in displays of power against the citizens. Or even if our speech is about the support of designated terror groups and represent national security risks, this person responds to. He says, merely expressing support for a terrorist group is still protected speech. So yes, of course. You can say what you want in a free speech society. However, you are not free from the consequences when free speech threatens the basic rules of society. You certainly are free from government-imposed consequences, actually. That's the whole basis. You can't say you're not protected from the consequences. They're not doing a cancellation Twitter post, dumbass. They're trying to cancel your freedom. It is literally the basis for the First Amendment. And it's so crazy because these guys are so stupid. What does that mean? The First Amendment prohibits the government from punishing or retaliating against constitutionally protected speech it doesn't like. If the government is imposing adverse consequences because of protected speech, that is unconstitutional. Okay, sir. Someone comes in front of your house and exercises free speech right to say, I will burn your house. You're good. No problem. No, sir, you are not. I love that this guy is literally trying to debate a constitutional law, a person who specializes in First Amendment litigation, okay? He is a First Amendment and defamation lawyer. The audacity. No, sir, you are not. No, why? Because that speech may have devastating consequences. So when a dude repeatedly and publicly states he supports a group calling for the death of America, there are consequences. If you cannot understand this, then you chose the wrong job. Except true threats are not protected speech. Saying I support Hamas is not a true threat. It is protected speech. So no, the government can't punish it, even if you think it has devastating consequences. Thanks for playing how to have no idea what you're talking about. If I were you, I might consider that someone whose job this is might know more about it than you. But then I'm not a moron. I liked your last sentence. You are correct in that this is not a crime. However, said type of speech will likely warrant an investigation and questioning. Speech is used as a probable cause or an escalating factor for a motive in crime. Example, if you beat someone up at the bar, this is battery and assault. If you beat someone up at the bar while yelling racial slurs at him, the rhyme is elevated to a hate crime. Your words are used as evidence to understand the motive. Hasan publicly supports terrorists. They may just be words, but those words beg the question. Is he sending them money? A crime. Is he helping them organize? A crime. That's not what question begging is. If you beat someone up, you already have committed a crime. What are you even trying to say? Cops can't just detain anyone they want because they said words of general support for someone else who committed a crime. Like, it is kind of crazy that this once again goes along with the incredibly the incredibly dumb thing that happens online all the time, where it's like American exceptionalism, American individualism, and just like Dunning-Kruger causes people to just go, no, actually, you, the expert dedicating his life to this, is actually wrong. I, random guy who doesn't like what this person is saying, will now sit here and act as though the First Amendment doesn't protect speech that I don't personally like. That's not how this works. This is also precisely the reason why, while I have maintained the position that, Nazis, neo-Nazis in particular, that violate all or take advantage of like the liberal notions of wanting to have normal discourse, getting at least like some kind of blackballing or blacklisting, have always maintained the position that the government should protect their speech regardless. Like, there is a limit to it, right? There are penalties that can be incurred through private modes of communication, but at the end of the day, I still understand that outside of circumstances where they are in the act of engaging in a hate crime, that yes, the government should not be arresting people on the basis of speech. The reason why I've also always maintained this position is because I'm Turkish. I'm from a country where there is no free speech. And part of that reason is why I can't even go back to my own country. Okay? This is the point. So yes, of course, I am frustrated to see my other country, the United States of America, the country that I was born in, Turkifying at a alarming rate. You were born in the U.S.? Yes. This conversation was even better. Platforming terrorist propaganda isn't protected speech. You are certainly no constitutional scholar. I'll say that much. You don't need to be a constitutional scholar to know that inciting support for a designated terrorist group crosses legal lines. But hey, keep defending the influencer industrial complex if that's your hill to die on. You don't have to be anything to know things that are completely wrong. I would imagine that's one of the principal benefits of being a moron. Imagine thinking the Constitution protects influencer cosplay while they regurgitate talking points from foreign terror orgs. You are not defending free speech. It does. Like, even if you think that that's what I'm doing, it literally does protect that. It precisely protects that. This is one of those things that is incredibly frustrating to me. And it's kind of funny seeing others who are now having to deal with what I have to deal with on a fucking daily basis. What I have to deal with on a daily basis is exactly this. The dumbest people alive that are heavily opinionated without like a true understanding of constitutional law, operating on their own personal feelings and assuming that the federal government and the way that things work is supposed to be at the mercy of your own individual perspective. Okay? And the reason why I'm talking about this is because every single dumb First Amendment defender, every single dumb free speech guy on the YouTuber orbit has basically unified in taking exactly the same positions that you're hearing with these blue check marks going after a First Amendment lawyer. Imagine thinking the Constitution protects influencer cosplay. No, imagination necessary. That's exactly what it does. Curious that you say the words regurgitating talking points and then you're not defending speech. What exactly do you think speech is? Speech ends where material support for terrorism begins. The Constitution isn't a suicide pact, no matter how badly TikTok lawyers want it to be. You spelled speech wrong, by the way. You're using words you read on the internet, but you don't understand again. If I'm misusing terms, you should be able to explain why without using sarcasm and smug filter. But you haven't, because deep down, even you know there's a line between opinion and laundering narratives for designated terror groups. You just don't care where it is. Why would I do that? You're immovably convinced that you're right without the slightest clue of what you're talking about. I'm not wasting my time on that. I'd rather do something fun like this. So instead of explaining your position like a lawyer, you're lobbing playground insults and dodging substance. If you want me to act like a lawyer for you, there's a fee arrangement that comes with it. This is an office, not a courtroom. This is the internet. If you hadn't come in hot, then consistently insisted you were correct, maybe I'd feel it was worth my time. You're bad. Guys who think free speech is when their friends get canceled for saying slurs fundamentally do not understand. Okay. Yeah. The Supreme Court of the United States has literally ruled that actual terror organizations like the American Nazi Party is protected under the First Amendment. It is ridiculous. Okay. This is one of the unique things about the United States of America and how expansive its First Amendment protections look like, as opposed to other liberal democracies around the world. Okay. But it does not make any sense that so many people just refuse to understand this thing, refuse to understand this fundamental principle. They refuse to understand the supposedly the most important part of the Constitution. They're just like, no, I don't understand. Free speech is only when I say slurs, or only when my friends get upset that titties are getting smaller in video games. And actually, when the government decides that a person that I don't like is going to be falsely detained or whatever, then it's actually good. It's not protected by the First Amendment. It's like, no, that's the only thing that is protected by the First Amendment in these conversations that are taking place. If the government actually arrested you for saying a slur, then yes, that would be a violation of the First Amendment, unless you were literally doing a hate crime. Okay? But on speech alone, especially if you are like saying that you like the American Nazi Party or the Klan or the Houthis or Hamas, even though these things are not even comparable in terms of like the damage that it causes for America in general, where like obviously domestic terror organizations are far more consequential than a nationalist emancipatory movement in Yemen or in occupied Palestinian territory that has never done anything outside of occupied Palestinian territory, for the record. Okay. As opposed to a domestic white nationalist terror group that is like actively doing direct acts of domestic terror on U.S. soil. Okay. But even then, it doesn't matter. It's still protected. It's still constitutionally protected speech. Here is Anna, who is a immigration human rights lawyer, that says, to be clear, Hasan's political speech is unequivocally protected under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Also, he's a U.S. citizen. He has a constitutional right to re-enter the country under the 14th Amendment. This should have never happened. And it's so funny because people go, because it didn't happen, law. And that's the thing that I wanted to get to. Okay? That's the point I wanted to get to, is like all of these dumb flop tubers don't know what they're talking about. And I please, if you're coming in here to be like, Hasan, I don't really like you, but I wanted to hear your perspective on this. I wanted to understand what was going on, but I don't really like you. And my favorite content creators don't like you at all. And I've heard a lot of stuff because I've seen a lot of clips of you online. I need you to please, you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to watch me, but please go and like read anything, just anything that's not a Twitter blue check mark reply. Okay. Please. Because these guys are deluding. These guys are delusional, and they are leading you down a wrong path. They are misinforming you. Okay? They are misinforming you. They don't know anything. They don't know what they're talking about. Do you understand? They do not know what they are talking about. This is what is frustrating about this process. There are a lot of out of touch, delusional, uninformed, apolitical, okay, content creators out there, slop tubers in general, or people like Asmongold, or people like, or people like Ethan Klein, like people that are just like angry for no discernible reason, or angry for whatever their own personal vendetta is, and they just basically delude people into believing wrong things. They push people into believing incorrect things. Okay? You don't have to agree with my positions on this, but when I tell you something about First Amendment protected speech, I'm telling you the truth. Okay?